So in part C of this question, we have Clio now considering the variation of amount of gold the machine applies to the necklaces. Because of the small sample size, Clio will use a small sample range of the data for the two randomly selected necklaces rather than a sample standard deviation. We're told Clio investigates the behavior of a range of samples for size n equals 2, and she will simulate the sampling distribution of the range of amount of gold applied on two randomly sampled necklaces. Clio generates 100,000 random samples of size n equals 2, independent values from a normal distribution with a mean of 300, standard deviation of 5. The range is calculated for two observations in each sample. The simulated sampling distribution of the range is shown in graph 1. This process is repeated using a standard deviation of 8, as shown in graph 2, and again using a standard deviation of 3, as shown in graph 3. In part C, we need to use the information in the graph to complete the questions. So in part 1, we need to describe the sampling distribution of the sample range for random samples of size n equals 2 from a normal distribution with a standard deviation of 5. So what we can say here is that it is skewed, right? So we have this kind of shape. It's very flat on the right side. So it is skewed right. And what we can say is that also almost all of the values are in between 0 and 25. So almost all values are in between 0 and 25 approximately, or around 20. And yeah, so that's very important. And then in part 2, we need to describe how the sampling distribution of the sample range for sample size n equals 2 changes as the value of the population standard deviation increases. So as the population standard deviation increases, the spread in the distribution increases. So we can say the spread in the distribution of the sample range increases, and therefore the mean of the distribution and therefore the mean is also going to increase. It's simply becoming wider, so obviously it must increase. Is the mean of distribution of sample range also increases. Essentially, the data is becoming more spread out here.